When the quarantine started, we wondered how we could get some beautiful information out there focused on sharing healthy ways to live and raise awareness about COVID-19. My name is Seth Eckert, and I lead the creative team at the Furrow, a studio based in Lexington, Kentucky. Information on how to wash your hands is incredibly important, but we also wanted to supplement that information with taking things a step further. So we gathered information from resources such as the CDC and the World Health Organization and formed short statements that were either based on general guidance or facts. To make this collaboration successful and feel cohesive, we knew we needed a brief to get everyone on the same page. We used the brief to outline the subject matter per shot, outline the deliverable specifications, and to build a visual identity for the project. Our hope was that these guardrails would give the artists room to flex their creative muscles and at the same time keep us all aligned. We relied on this format and design style to unify everything. So this included the color direction, mood, and a style frame. In building the mood, we selected geometric and abstract compositions as the scenes would be grounded by the text per frame. We chose a color palette that had enough depth to mold to each concept. And finally, we built out a frame to use as a foundation on how style, mood, and color could all come together. After we built out all of this, we started to see who might be interested in helping us out. It was really cool to get to hear back from so many artists who genuinely were excited to come on board and help us out. I'm continually hyped that I get to be a part of this awesome design and animation community. Again, huge shout out to the amazing team that sacrificed their time to come on board and help us with the project. In efforts to further impact our community, we wanted to share some insight into how some of this was made. So we're teaming up with the School of Motion and the motion designers who built this outstanding work to break down some of what took place in creating these visuals. For this video, I've got Alex Deaton joining me, and we're going to be digging into his project files. Alex went beyond just using After Effects by pulling together the use of cell animation in Adobe Animate, some effectors in Cinema 4D, and some shape layer tricks in After Effects to pull it all together. At first, a multiple program workflow may sound intimidating, but once you see the breakdown, you may be surprised at how simple little workflow improvements like this can stack up to make a truly remarkable end product. Alex covers how he blended these different mediums, building and using references for nailing animations, compositing effects, and many sweet little workflow tips. I highly suggest downloading the project file and following along with Alex and I. You can find the link in the description. So I know, Alex, with us handing all of this stuff off to you, like the mood and all of that stuff, I know Marco was the one that designed the piece ultimately, but I'm curious from my perspective, how all of this landed with you when you received like the mood and the style frames and the color and all that stuff and started to see what Marco was putting together. Did that start to spark some ideation for some of the motion that you were going to exhibit in your project?
Yes, definitely. When I saw Marco's amazing frames, I was frankly intimidated at first because, as most motion designers know, any wavy object that you have to animate it spells trouble right out of the gate. But I knew that this is going to be a great challenge to tackle. He had designed a couple really, really good frames, and so my mind immediately started sparking off with what I could do with the wings and how we could get them to unfurl and do the wave, and then eventually how to make the loop happen. So yeah, I was kind of running wild when I first saw them.
Yeah. So as far as I know, when he had built those, the idea of thinking about how things would loop, what were your initial thoughts? I guess as far as your process was concerned, did you just start storyboarding things out, or did you just kind of dive in and start animating straight ahead? What was your process there?
I think because we were working on a somewhat tight schedule, and this is all after hours, I forwent, if that's a word, storyboarding, and just kind of went for it. I saw in my head what I wanted to happen, and it was only about a 10-second animation anyway, or 7.5-second animation anyway. So I knew that I could sort of plot it out and just go straight forward. If it were longer, I probably would have storyboarded it. But yeah, I knew that I basically wanted the butterfly's wings to flap off and wipe the screen back to the start from the very get-go. And so that's what I ended up building it towards.
So as far as your pipeline for execution on that, I know we had, I know Marco's original design had some, like, I think the wings were originally straight and you had like a little bit of a different approach. And then we thought, hey, like, what if we added some wave to that? Sorry, that was
Yeah, that was you,
an
wasn't
additional
it?
challenge. Yeah, that was my bad, dude.
That's
But
right.
I think it helped, you know, I mean, it added a little bit of extra excitement to it, and
Oh,
added kind of like
absolutely.
that flowy vibe to it. But yeah, so like, what was your pipeline like? Because I know you used, when we saw the original work come back, we are like, golly, this isn't done just in 2D. You know, you've got kind of multiple layers of programs. It seems like. So what software did you use as far as developing this?
Yeah, should I just dive into to how I built the wings?
Let's dive into that.
Okay, yeah. So first, my obvious first idea was I'm just going to use wave warp. I don't want to have to go outside of After Effects. Maybe I could make this work with wave warp, and so that's how I built it at first. And I'm going to jump inside the project file here. Give me just 1 second. So yeah, I initially just had the wings sort of a shape layer open up, and had a wave warp along the shape layer, and then I just mirrored the top and bottom of it. But what I found is that it didn't look the way I wanted it to look. I wanted it to look like it was unfurling. And then on top of that, you essentially have no control over a wave warp. You have to do all sorts of things on top of it to make it work. You have to put all sorts of effects like corner pinning or other things to get the taper to look right the way that it was designed in Marco's frames. So eventually I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this in Cinema. So I had my friend Preston Gibson, who actually happens to live right next door to me, come over and give me a few pointers on how I could build this out in Cinema. And he told me that using formula in a linear field would be the smartest way to build that out. So what I did is I actually ended up taking a plane. I'm just going to turn off these layers here so you can see the originals. Right. So I ended up making a plane in Cinema, and then I used a couple of effectors here, like a correction effector, tip taper, and then a main taper to get the original shape back the way that Marco had designed it. And then I added a formula effector on top of that to get the wave going. But in order to get the formula effector to look the way I wanted, so that would be to have no wave at the beginning of the tip and have a wave kind of maximize through the middle of the wing and then taper off at the end, I had to put a linear field on it. And that essentially, in this mapping section here inside of Cinema, that allowed me to control the shape of the wave a lot more finely than I would have been able to if I had done it inside of After Effects using wave warp. So props to Preston for walking me through that. It was a huge help. And then just to get the unfurl, I got the wing itself to scale up, and then I just used a bend deformer. That's it. The bend deformer just sort of wraps it around, and then it sort of unfurls like that. So yeah, that's how I built it in Cinema. And then the trick after that was going to be how to get that into After Effects and make it work the way I wanted it to. So I did sort of a fake puzzle mat, which, if you don't know, that is it's a type of 3D compositing technique that you can export 3D with different colors, bring it into After Effects, and sort of key the colors out to separate them and composite them in After Effects how you'd like to. So I colored the wing in primary colors here, red, yellow, and blue. And then I imported it into After Effects. Jump inside the wing layer here into After Effects and pumped a gradient through it. So this is where it's going to get really nitty gritty. I don't know if you want me to walk through this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go into it. So once I had the 3D layer inside of After Effects, like so, I ended up building a gradient on a shape layer so that I could get the proper colors and also get this effect I really wanted to see, where the gradient is sort of moving through the wing as it's waving, like so. And in order to do that, this is an effect I use all the time when I want this rolling gradient effect, is using colorama, actually, in order to push a gradient through and get it to sort of evolve, like you see there. So it's just sort of like rolling across the shape. How you do that is essentially, give me 1 sec. You put a ramp on a shape layer like so. I'm just using a regular old gradient ramp inside of the shape layer. And then you put colorama on top of that. and you use the intensity of the luminance from that layer to map the colorama effect onto the layer. And so then I build my gradients inside of the output cycle here, and I can just animate the phase shift, this little evolving effector here, and that'll just push the gradient through the layer and make it roll like that, so it looks nice and smooth and looks like it's evolving with the wave of the wings. So that's essentially how I composited the 3D layer into After Effects to get that look. The next step is where it was really tricky. I knew what I wanted to do to get the wings to animate off, and I knew there's probably no way I could get it done in either After Effects or Cinema. I wanted the butterfly to sort of flap off screen, and then for the wings to sort of wrap and wipe across the screen to end the animation. And so I went back to Preston and I said, "Hey, bud, please tell me there's some way to do this in Cinema." And he said, "No, you're out of luck. Sorry." So right. I decided, okay, I guess it's time to do Cell. So this whole thing is sort of a wild combination of Cinema, After Effects trickery, and Cell animation. And so I'm going to walk through how I kind of combined these two at the end here. So after I'd gotten it composited, it was going through this loop here where the wings were sort of just undulating and the gradients were pushing through it. That all looked nice. I knew I was going to have to fake some of this ending animation here to get it to look nice in Cell. So I exported the loop for the wings out of After Effects as a reference, and then I brought it into Animate. So I'm going to jump into Animate here. And let me see where's the...
I was going to even mention to that point. Oh, yeah. It's so important to build some kind of reference when you're going into Cell animation. Otherwise, you can animate the whole sequence and be like, oh no, the timing is off or whatever. So I'm wondering maybe if you want to speak more to even just like building the reference side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it was essentially that I knew hand animating these waves was going to be far too complicated for what I wanted. I only needed them to undulate for a second before the butterfly sort of pushed off screen. So I rendered out a loop of the wings just undulating in After Effects, just sort of the wave going through itself. And then I used that as a reference to build the beginning of this animation here, where they're still sort of pushing through a little bit. They're still kind of catching the end of that animation so that it would match, so the movement wouldn't look too jittery. If you actually look closely in my After Effects file, you can see the mistake. I might as well show it. Why not?
Hey,
There's this point at the beginning of the animation where the wings sort of jitter on the top there, and that's just because my cell didn't match precisely to the perfect smooth formula effectors from Cinema there.
Well, it still looks good. I would have not caught that unless you brought it up.
Yeah, that's one of the tricks I would definitely say to people in motion design is you can hide more than you think, because this is a total Frankenstein. You can get away with more than you think when you sort of butt different techniques up against each other. You just have to go for it first and crap it together, and it'll eventually work if you keep pushing it. So yeah, I went into Animate and used the Cinema reference I had rendered out to sort of get the beginning of this motion down. And then what I basically did is I hand animated, no one likes hearing this, but this is what I did. I hand animated the little butterfly body doing that squish and moving up. And once I felt satisfied with that I felt that looked good enough, the animation was nice, I started to do each wing layer one by one. I just sort of made them match the movement of the butterfly, tried to get a little bit of a push off there so it looked like they were kind of rippling down and then pulling up with the butterfly. And then I just, let me turn on my rough so you can see what it looked like initially. I think you can see this is my layer getting the motion, just the closing and twisting and bubbling motion at the end there. That was me working that out on the outer edges of the wings. Once I got that to a place where I thought that looked good, I just started applying it to the rest of the layers one by one until eventually I had something that didn't look half bad. And then I had to do the hard part. I had to come back into After Effects. And because I didn't want to clean this up and animate, which essentially means to make all those rough edges look smooth and vector-like, which you'd have to go through and do that with a pen tool layer by layer. Typically that works for character animation, but for this, I knew that I needed, I just needed the wings to be on there for a second. I needed to push through all the same compositing techniques I had used on the cinema renders through the animate layer. So I just did it with shape layers. And that's, this is a brutal, it's not fun. You just have to move all the path points piece by piece. But on the back end, if you're doing this for something this short, it really does get the job done. I don't know if you guys know Scott Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look at Scott Johnson's stuff on Twitter, you can see him doing this all the time. He put out this animation recently of a girl playing guitar, and it's all path animations in After Effects. So he could probably speak more to this method than me, but it just seemed to be the right way to go for this. So I got the animate render pushed out, brought it into After Effects as a reference, and then one by one, I took the wings and hand animated them. Every single path, every single point to follow the animation out of CC Animate. And I did this by hand, and it took a long time to get it to follow, but it worked out all right in the end. And you can see at this point right here where the wings sort of turn from the wavy portion to the stripes at the end. I collapse all my different points together. I just sort of close the Bezier handles and drag them into one another just like that, so that I have fewer points to worry about. Then I can just worry about those 4 points at this point to match my cell animation. So yeah, I basically matched it frame by frame, and then I went into my all my gradient layers there, and I just matched the gradient layers as they animated off. So I moved the ramp. Excuse me, let me open this up. Just give me a sec. Yeah, I animated the ramp here so that it followed off with the wing. And everything just sort of looks like it swoops right off screen. And it worked better than I was expecting, I have to say. When I played it back finally with all the pieces together, I was kind of surprised. But yeah, that's basically my method for getting this to work. There's no easy answer. I really wanted wave warp to work, but that wasn't the case. I had to piece it together in Cinema and cell animate it in the end and just composite together that way.
So when we set out, I know we had both the horizontal and the vertical layout. When you did the cell reference, did you do that in like a large square, or I'm trying to remember exactly how you did that as well, like tackling that challenge of the two formats?
Yeah. So my method for making sure that I had the format set for you guys, the vertical format, was to just build it wide. So I just built it in a super wide. Yeah, I think it was a 4K comp, about 3,413 pixels across, 1920 high. So I just built it out wide, and I just kept in mind where the crop points were at any given time. I think I had a reference layer somewhere in here. I'm not going to be able to find it right now, of course, that showed me where the edges of the vertical comp would be. But otherwise, yeah, I just built it wide so that we could play it wide. And then in the end, I have a layer here. Just let me put that up. Comp where I just comped the whole thing in a vertical comp here, so I could put the text in.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, if you got through the whole thing and then you were like, oh no, I got to do this for the other version, that would have been an absolute nightmare trying to match that again. So the importance of making sure your canvas was the correct size was huge. Yes,
absolutely.
So you have Marco's designs. We had the wave and the wings, and you knew you wanted to have those wrap. So in that moment, you knew that there was something that needed to change about the way in which you animated it. What was it?
I think I can speak to the general principle a little, if you don't mind. Just going off for a second. So when I saw the designs, I knew that, I had a picture in my head of what I wanted the animation to look like. And we all know what that's like to see it perfectly in your mind. And then as soon as you sit down and realize, oh no, how do I build this? I think it's important, at least it is for me, when I'm trying to push myself, to keep the part in my mind that I want to make happen. I want to see that end result, and and just use all the tools at my disposal to make that happen. And in this case, it just so happened that I had to use 3 different programs to get what I wanted to have happen. I know if you were better at Cell, you probably could have just done this whole thing Cell, or if you were really good with After Effects, you could probably figure out some trick. For me, I went, because it was such a short schedule and I had to do all these sorts of different things. I went to Cinema to get one part done because it was the easiest, and then to Cell to finish it up, just because I knew that there was no other way to get that specific thing I had in my mind onto the screen. So I tried not to hold myself back, essentially. I tried not to say, oh, I can't do this in After Effects, so I'm just going to have to stick with Wave Warp. Or, oh, I can't get the rising and wrapping portion of the animation that I see ending it in Cinema, so I'm just going to have to figure out some easier way to get it done. I said, no, how could I make this happen? And it just so happened that the answer that I had at my disposal was cell animation, so I chose that at the end. So that was my reasoning behind jumping between all these different programs. It's just that I didn't want to compromise on the end result, and so I ended up having to juggle different tools.
And that makes me think too, like one thing you mentioned about how, obviously this was a project we did outside of work hours. So, in a project like this, and even in a client project, time is a factor. So do you feel like, through that lens, you were thinking, hey, I do have kind of infinite time, but I also don't have infinite time on this. And that you had a quality level in your mind and you thought, okay, I have the opportunity to expand into these other programs and maybe make something different and new that I don't normally do. Was that kind of the trigger that kind of pushed you also into that space? Or were you thinking also through the lens of like, I only have X amount of time, I think this pipeline will get me there quicker?
It was a little bit of both. The beauty of jumping onto projects like these that are, number one, for a great cause, and number two, are organized by peers that you respect, is that you want to push yourself and you have a deadline. So it was really great for me to know that, I had essentially, I think, about a week to get through this particular animation. I did one previous to this. And I knew that I wanted to do something excellent. And I thought at the beginning, maybe I could do the wings in Cell altogether. And I could have done that, but it would have probably taken me twice as long. I'm not a particularly fast Cell animator, although I'm pretty competent in it. I knew that I had to use a tool that would essentially give me the waves for free. And so that was part of the reason I jumped into Cinema. It was a balance between wanting to push myself and also making sure that I didn't embarrass myself and not turn in a project when all my peers were in the same Slack channel and sharing all their awesome work. So yeah, it was trying to have it both ways, which is obviously super important when you're working on client projects too. And you're not necessarily wanting to work yourself into the ground at 4 a.m. in the morning on a Pepsi commercial.
Right, exactly.
To know all those time-saving tools. So.
No, that's well said. I feel like that's something I feel often is, you want to do the best work possible. You never want to cut corners, but sometimes you can leverage software to your advantage to cut those corners and ultimately get a result that was probably better than you originally thought. So, because I know like when we first saw the designs, I kept thinking like, man, like I know he wanted to do something. I think you had mentioned to me about like some kind of wrap or something. And I wasn't aware of the pipeline that you were choosing, but I know like ultimately when I saw the end result, I was like, man, he made the right call and he definitely tied it all back together really, really well. So kudos again. It's that scene was super badass.
Thank you. Yeah, I was super happy about it. Got a bunch of high fives in the Slack channel when I posted
yes.
It. It made me feel real good.
Yeah, we were all freaking out. I think that might have been the only shot that I think had Cell. I'll have to double check on that. But yeah, I know, like, because you can always see the lift on stuff like that, and especially like if it seems like you built your reference out super solid. I know you shared the GIF of your reference that you spit out of Animate, which is really, really cool to see.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess so as far as execution of the frame, did you have any pain points in recreating what Marco had done as far as like the compositing effects, plus also some of like the direction that we had laid out? Was there anything that you tinkered with or changed or had like pain points with?
That's actually, yeah, I can speak to that a little bit because I think a lot of people, when they look at these frames, they have the same feeling that all of the animators saw when they looked at the frames, which is, oh no, I'm going to have to rebuild all of this.
Exactly.
Because, of course, the designers were using all sorts of lighting effects and the much more advanced gradient tools of Illustrator to build these frames out. And so bringing these into AE, we kind of had to find some workarounds. And so you can see that a little bit in sort of the orbs that are surrounding the butterfly here. I could achieve most of that with just with gradient layers. So let me just select a particle here to illustrate my point. Yeah, so as you can see with these particles here, I could achieve most of that with just gradient fills. So here on the edge, I have this sort of lighting effect here, and that's just a gradient with a not with a radial. That's the other one. It's a gradient with it is a radial. Never mind. It's a gradient with a radial shape to it, just off the edge here, giving this highlight, and another gradient up here, giving this little bloom here in the corner. And that's just a very simple way to recreate some of the effects he had in Illustrator on a single shape layer to make it simple to animate with. But in terms of the butterfly body itself, that one was quite a bit trickier. So I'll hop into the pre-comp there and show you exactly how I put that together. Okay. So yeah, this is how I built out the butterfly body to match Marco's luxurious, let's just call it luxurious design.
Yes.
With all these great glints and shines and stuff like that. I basically had to build a bunch of different layers to get all that stuff in there. I tried to do it as much as I could procedurally, that is without having to build out different shapes to replicate the highlight layers. And I'll show you how I did a couple of those. And that's one of them is with layer styles. So I used the inner shadow layer style, which is an excellent little tool inside of After Effects to add some dimension to your shape layers. To add the basically the outer glow that was kind of around each of the shapes to give them this look of, like they have a light wrap on them. And I plopped the inner shadow onto each of the shapes here. And then I adjusted the parameters here to give it a bit of an angle and a bit of distance, so it was showing up a little more on one side than the other, so it kind of looked like there was a directional light. And then I also changed that angle as the butterfly was animating on, so it kind of looked like the light was wrapping around the edge of the butterfly's body a little bit. So that's how I added a general highlight layer to it. And then on top of that, inside of the actual shapes themselves, I added all sorts of little tricky things like a gradient just to give it a sort of more dimensional look. And then I did this trick here, which merges these shapes together to add the stripe itself, this sort of shape that Marco had designed in Illustrator, so that I could get that to move across the bottom of the body of the butterfly to make it look like it was spinning. Should I explain how I did merge shapes there? Do you think that'll be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is something that once I learned how to do it in After Effects, I do it all the time now. So this is when you're building out a shape. If you want to mask another shape through a shape, what you would typically do in After Effects, is to duplicate the shape layer itself, make it into a mask, maybe parent the path of the mask shape to the original shape, and then make a whole new shape layer and just alpha mat it through the masked shape. And that, of course, that clutters up your layer panel here. That is something I like to avoid if I can. And so what I do instead is that I for instance here, the main shape is what I call bottom here. That's the shape of the actual butterfly's butt. I duplicate that shape, and then the shape that I want to mask through it, I put into a whole new group layer inside of the same shape layer here called shape. I don't know why I called it shape. That's a bad naming convention. But I have the stripe and the bottom mask, which is the path of which is parented to the original shape here at the bottom. I have that in the same shape layer, and I have a merge paths inside of this shape group. So the merge paths is set to intersect, and that basically allows me to create a masked shape layer inside of the original shape layer. So it's all contained inside of one thing here. And because the bottom mask here is parented, or is the path is pick whipped to the path of this shape here, I don't have to worry about matching any of the animation or duplicating any keyframes or anything like that. It just sort of works. And then I can animate the stripe here inside of the shape, which is what I did. I have it sort of animating across, and it just masks straight through the butt, and it's all contained inside of a single shape layer, which is really handy, especially because I have the...
I was going to say, I think like the real beauty of this kind of stuff, because I do a lot of this as well, is it's, especially since the fact that you basically made all of these layers 3D layers as well, is it's almost like you get the power of alpha matting and masking, but it's contained into the object itself, to where then you could do position, scale, rotation, and even additional layers of masking, matting, and things like that on top of all of it. So I know that's like one of those huge beneficial powers of the merge paths that I love. So it's really cool to see you use that here too.
Absolutely. And you don't have to worry about, if you're going to infinitely rasterize your pre-comp to maintain the resolution inside of a master comp. You don't have to worry about any of the alpha mats breaking, which can be a problem, especially if you're doing 3D. It just gets tricky. So it contains it all in one spot there. It's kind of like a shape layer pre-comp is kind of a way to think about it. Exactly. And it's a really handy trick. Yeah. So that's something I would definitely recommend you start doing if you, like me, work with shape layers all the time. So that's how I composited the shape in there. And then on top of that, I needed, because he had too many... Damn you, Marco. It was pretty, but it was annoying. He had too many shiny layers all around the edges of the shape here. I had to build another shape there and mask through a second, just like I was describing you wouldn't do typically. I had to do that with this because I think it's because I had to... it was just easier to manage the animating these shapes around the edges in a separate shape layer. Maybe my reasoning wasn't great there, but that's what I ended up doing. So I added this little white layer on the bottom to give it a little bloom. Oh, I remember why I did it. Yeah, that's right. There's a blur on it. That's why. Because I couldn't blur the main shape layer. I had to blur out these highlights here so that they had a nice fall off. I had to put them on a separate shape layer. They couldn't be on the original.
So do you have...
Unfortunately... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, so as far as like the mask layer is concerned, I was wondering even if you want to show us like all of your expressions that you have across this part. But like how many... Did you link every single path that was supposed to be like the butt to like one animated butt layer?
Yes, yes, I did. Yes, we'll call it the butt. That is what it is. It's called bottom here, but I should have named it butt. Big mistake on my part.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I pick whipped the path of the butt shape layer to the original one here in my main shape here, the one named bottom. So this is the path here. You can see that's where the animation resides for the sort of the fake. It's sort of a fake vertical turn here on the butterfly. That's what's driving the path animation to get the little tip here to pull out, and the part here to pull out towards the abdomen. I just pick whipped inside of this mask layer I was describing previously. I pick whipped the shape to that there, and in this new mask that I had to build for these softened and blurred highlights, I pick whipped that as well. And then I of course just parented the full mask shape to the original shape as well.
Yeah, so it's a real clean way to like set up your file. And I know I do this too, because it's especially if you get like complex compositing, like stuff like this, having your animations driven by like one layer is huge. That way, like if you have no layer selected and you hit like you or show just all the animation properties, you're not going to have multiplied animations of the same path animation across different layers. So it just keeps your file like so clean and just so efficient. So kudos again. It's a smart build, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That is through painfully learning the hard way, doing it the hard way by hand for years, and then finally doing it the right way and being like, oh God, all those hours wasted. But hey, at least you know how to do it right. So yeah, learn from my mistakes, please.
Yeah, especially like if you have a client that's going to be changing stuff a lot, which I know we all have those, like it's funny, like those kinds of projects that I have, the files are some of the most organized, clean, because it's like you're expecting things to change. So if you go in with that same mindset, you actually, I feel like you save yourself hardship later, with everything. I think it also drives down file size, which I know for a lot of people isn't a huge deal, but for me, I get excited about that.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. And organization it's so important. You spend more time setting it up. You'll notice inside of my project file, hopefully I didn't avoid doing this anywhere, but typically I name everything. I name the layers. I name the shapes inside of the layers. And if I'm getting really tricky, I'll even name the paths depending on whether or not I have multiple paths inside a shape layer. That is just, for me, it's so helpful. I feel like I'm such a scatterbrained person that when I'm going back to apply client changes to something, it's so easy. If everything's named, it's all labeled, it's all organized like this. And especially if I do time-saving measures like, pick whipping my mask shape layer so that all of my animation is on a single path. That sort of stuff is just really, really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I did a horrible job of that on my style frame for this project. So I'm glad to see that at least that you guys were organized on your end. Because I think mine are just like shape layer, mask, just the basic names. But no, that's huge.
Yes, it definitely takes more time to set up, but it pays off on the back end big time.
So did you continuously rasterize this comp into the main comp? And was that some of the reasoning why everything in that layer is 3D?
Yes, it is. That is why. So if you can see, this is the butterfly main body here in my layer structure in the main comp, and it's infinitely rasterized and 3D for all the other 3D layers that are going on. And that means inside of the actual pre-comp that contains the body, all those layers have to be 3D as well. But because I simplified the build, that was no problem at all.
Yeah. That's a huge issue I've discovered the hard way as well as like, if you have a pre-comp, you're trying to continuously rasterize in a 3D composition and that sub-comp is not 3D, you're going to basically be shooting yourself in the foot. Like, why is this not layered or linking up? Like, what is wrong with this? So,
headaches everywhere. Yeah. Yes. So that really helped this little piece fit together with the whole thing. It made it, once you stack little tricks like that on top of each other, it looks like magic. I know that when I see my favorite motion design pieces, I always wonder, how did they do that? The answer is just a bunch of little tricks stacked on top of each other and, a bunch of caffeine-addled hours sitting behind a computer and tweaking it forever. And
especially if you're going to do cell in After Effects.
Yes, especially if you're going to do cell in After Effects.
Can we see the keys on that one again?
Yeah, sure. Let me jump inside my wings animating off. That's what that pre-comp is called. So let's see here. This is the outer wing. And is that it? That can't be it. I guess it is. Huh.
You make it look easy.
There it is. Yeah, well, that's weird. Did I actually... Oh no, that's the mask. Never mind. I was like, I thought there had to be a keyframe for every frame. Yes, I was looking at the wrong layer there. So that's the mask layer there that you can see is separating this from the other one. Oh yeah, so here I can talk to that a little bit real quick. So you can see I have one layer here that's for both of these, the top and the bottom of this wing here, and I needed obviously to push through different gradient colors for that. So that it would match the design. And so in order to do that, instead of duplicating the wing layer and, having multiple keyframes, I did the same thing that I did with the butterfly body there. I pick whipped the path animation for the original wing layer where I'm doing all those frame by frame moves with the path animation here to this one. And then I just masked it off. That simple. So that I could push through the different gradient colors for the top and bottom of the wing there. That way I save myself a bunch of time. I don't have, I have to go back and adjust the animation for the wing for a specific portion, it just copies through. But yeah, you can see in the wing animation here, it's just hold keyframes. This was done was this 24?
I think it was.
I think I might have animated this. Oh yeah, it is. That's right. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. And now I'm remembering. The nightmares are coming back. Yes. It's a 24 FPS and I'm just doing hold keyframes. It's not necessary to do hold keyframes here because it's, moving at the frame rate of the comp, but that's how I would do it if I were doing, let's say 12 FPS cell animation inside of After Effects is you just do hold keyframes and just do it frame by frame, or at least every time you want the animation to move. And that's essentially how I copied the cell animation from Adobe Animate here, is I just went in and I moved all of these points frame by frame by frame. And
so did you do the butterfly's body first, or did you do the wings first?
I did the butterfly's body first. And I think I spoke to that inside of Animate. Yeah. So what I did, Yeah. So what I did first is once I got the ref in here, is I animated the butterfly's body. Here, I'll just turn all these off. I just did that to get that nice little squishy squish as he's moving off screen. And once I had that, I could kind of plan out the rest of the wing animation to follow. And like I said originally too, I have this rough here to get the main outer movement of the wings sort of blocked in. And then once I had that, I could go back in and fill out the rest of the wings to somewhat match it. Although you can see I sort of changed my mind a little bit on some of the shapes there when I redid it.
Yeah, gosh, I remember seeing that frame and thinking, man, how's he going to get from that frame to the other one with a wipe? But you did a really good job of taking. It was almost like if you look at like frame like 7, you see you've got like that gap at the top and the gap at the bottom. So it's like the idea of like eliminating those two. So you had it split at the top, come together at the bottom, and then this like siloing, swirly, twirly effect. Very, very smart, right. Dude. Very smart.
Yeah. It was basically, I kind of thought of it like a zipper. It almost looked like it was zipping up, and then I just sort of have the tops of the wings there sort of billow out and fill out the rest of the frame. And then it was just a matter of moving these last few color swipes across the screen to get us to the original dark blue for the background of the beginning.
Yeah, those last couple frames, that's about my skill in cell animation. So.
Dude. I feel that every time I jump back and animate, I'm like, why am I doing this? Right. I'm so bad at this. But it even because I'm not Henrique Barone by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not necessarily all that skilled at character animation in Cell, but it's helpful to have as a piece of your toolkit to achieve some things that you just can't get in the original tools. Like I couldn't get the wipe out of Cinema. I couldn't do it now. Well, I could do it in After Effects with path animation, but it takes a lot longer to block that stuff out in path animation. So knowing how to rough it in Cell, even if you're eventually going to do a path animation in After Effects, is just a really great tool to have.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the reference layer stuff is huge. It makes such a huge impact on the project, quality all around. So as far as like, I know you had that one moment where the cell didn't line up 1-for-1, which we're all going to see now forever.
Yes.
Now that you've brought attention to it. But as far as like maybe changing anything else on this project, do you think there's anything else you would have done differently?
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's a part of the animation we're not going to talk about because it's so much more underwhelming than the rest of it. But it's this jewel at the beginning. So this jewel that Marco had designed, I really wanted to. I didn't end up. I'm not really happy with it. And that's okay because I had a lot more to focus on with the wings, but I really wanted it to have dimension to it. And so the setup for that is frankly a nightmare. So whoever opens up this project file, I'm going to apologize in advance. I used After Effects, the what's it called? Connect Paths to.
Yes, I love that plugin. I use it all the time. Their plugin.
Yes, so this is
JavaScript, whatever it is.
Create nulls from paths, yes. So this is new to After Effects. I think the version previous to the one we're in now, but I'll just pop this window open to show you the UI for it. So it's native to After Effects now, and it's super handy. Essentially, what it allows you to do is create a path, a shape layer, and then drive the points on the shape layer with nulls, so you can move them all independently. So again, this is going to be so slow when I jump into this. I'm just warning you. The jewel was made up of all these different facets, and I wanted to be able to move them all independently and get them to sort of wrap around and have dimension to them. It didn't end up looking the way I wanted to, and I think I probably would have built this differently. I would have either spent less time on this so I could spend more time on the wings and just sort of settle with the fact that it wasn't going to look perfect. The end product wasn't going to look perfect, or I would have tried to build it in 3D in some way, I think.
To counter your points, I mean, I feel like it turned out pretty nice. I remember seeing the spin and I thought, man, that's really dope. And I think also, like, if you think about the scene as a whole, the simplicity, if we want to call it that for the open, I think helps offset the contrast of the complexity of the next portion that's more vibrant. I think that really helped with the story. So like, even if you felt like you didn't add enough, I feel like there was enough to echo what we needed. So again, kudos.
Well, that's very generous of you. Thank you, Seth. My wounded ego, it's coming back. Yes. So, I mean, it more or less, I was able to do what I wanted to do. I built out all the facets that were inside of Marco's design and shape layers here. And then I had to build an extra side of facets because I wanted to do this turn. And then essentially inside of every shape, I just selected the path. Oh, it's going to be so slow. It does not want me to select this. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. And then I went over here and I just clicked points follow nulls. And what that'll do is it'll put an effect on the layer that you can see over here for each point. And then it'll pop out these nulls that allow you to control that layer. And so I did that with every single facet. And I ended up having to collapse them inside of these little organizing folders I've got here that allow you to control all the points. And I just moved them independently. So I have animations on pretty much every single one of these. I did parent when a facet was when all the points met at one point. I did parent all the other points there to a single null, so I could control that specific intersection with one null. But it was still a bear either way. It ended up being quite a lot to handle. And
that
so
turned
then
out pretty good. One question before we get too far away. What's the little grouping thing that you just used with a little down?
Oh, yeah. I think I've heard from other people that there's other tools that are better than this, have more flexibility, but this is something I've been using for years now. It's a little plugin called GM Fold Layers plugin. I got it way back in the day. I think 2016 or 2017 or something like that. And essentially you just go to the layer here and you click this little thing that pops up once you have the plugin installed that says create group divider. And it pops open a shape layer here. Let me scroll to the top to get to it. It says group divider on it. And you can rename that whatever you want as long as you don't delete this arrow here. And then when you double click it, it will unfold and refold the layers beneath it unless there's another group folder layer like that below it. So as you can see, it's folding these top two layers I've got here and nothing else.
I feel like those are like some of the most powerful tools where it's like they seem so simple, but they do such a function like that that's just great. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to find scripts and plugins like that, but they don't exist, or they come with like so much extra frill that I don't need or ever use, where it's just like, can I just have it do this one thing?
Right. So that's part of the reason I haven't upgraded to, I can't remember what the plugin is that I got recommended on Twitter recently by some other animator. But I haven't upgraded simply because this is so simple. It's just one layer. You just double click it. It folds all the layers beneath it. And, I have so many plugins. I've downloaded so many of them and I ended up not using so many of them because they're just too complicated. They do too much. So I really like this for that reason.
Yep, exactly. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Yeah. Just to wrap up this part of the animation, how I built it. Let me see. Jewel main. That's probably where it is. Named it main. Inside of each of these facets, I've got a gradient fill, and that's allowing me to do this sort of shine trick when the thing moves. All the gradients you see are spinning independently of every other facet, and that gives it sort of this look like all the facets are kind of glinting in the light or something like that. So that's how I built that out.
That's crazy cool, dude. So I guess and then everything else beside that, in the main composition was more or less simplistic, I would say overall. Was there anything else you feel like was groundbreaking we should dive into?
Yes. So, okay. The last thing I would love to talk about is all these particles here and how they helped sell this sort of swooping and moving thing up at the end here. So all these particles were built by hand. They're just little shape layers moving around. You can see pretty much all of them are here except for a couple others. And I just animated them by hand as the butterfly is bursting out. So you can see their path animation there. I have them sort of shooting out from the middle and then sort of slowing down. Let me go up to one of them so you can see the actual keyframes. And spinning around. So it's real simple stuff. It's just position and rotation. But one of the things I was really happy with that I did is at the end here, when they swoop up, I've got them I'm faking the physics as if they're little floaters in the room and they're being affected by the air moving when the butterfly moves up and swirls around screen. So I've got them moving and I've got them kind of going down and then swooping off to the right or the left there. You can see them kind of moving around the swirl. So that was all done by hand after I had the swirl in place and everything was looking nice there. I sort of just animated the particles in a way that looked like they were being moved by the wings as it was swirling off. So you can see I've got a lens effect here that kind of distorted the layer. Let me turn that off briefly. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Oh God, it's going to slow everything down. Sorry, guys. This is
the joys of RAM preview.
Yeah, joys of RAM preview. No kidding. I'm just going to leave it on. So you can see in this particle here in the bottom left-hand corner, I've got it sort of moving around and behind the swirl. So I did in some of these duplicate the layer and put it behind the wing layer. I think I've got a layer here called, back particles. So I stuck a couple of them back there when they go around and behind the butterfly layer. You can see it with that, particularly this particle up here in the top corner, sort of swirls around and then goes behind the wings. So yeah, that was just something that it was pretty simple, basic After Effects stuff, position, rotation on all these different particle layers that just helped sell this movement as the butterfly was moving off at the end, just sort of pushing off into the left there. So yeah.
Looks great, man. Good call on those. Did you, when you duplicated them, did you do the copy relative property links, or did you just duplicate it with all the keys and everything?
I think I just Command D duplicated them, deleted the keyframes, and then parented them to the original layer. I know that copy with relative property links is supposed to do all that for you, but for some reason I've had trouble with it, or I'm too stupid to know what I'm doing wrong. I just duplicate it manually. Maybe that's something I need to learn and save myself a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I've had some trouble with it myself, but I think it's usually like if I copy and it doesn't have the same parenting system, or if like I don't know, I don't understand the ins and outs of why that doesn't work sometimes, but I feel you on that. But yeah, sometimes like the most simplistic way to go about doing it is the right way to do it. So, and right. I know like you fake the dynamics here, and it really sells it. So that was a good call.
Oh, and one more thing, I did the same thing with these particles at the beginning. So that was actually the last thing I added, was I sort of have them swoop on like that, and that kind of completed the illusion of the loop. So I'll play it so you can see here. So it goes burst. And then on the swoop here, all these particles sort of swoop off, and these in the front here move on from the right screen, and then the ones in the back move on from the left screen, and that's just sort of make it look like there's a tornado moving these particles around when the wing swoop happens. So
it's like a butterfly tornado. So as far as compositing this versus the rest of the work, obviously there's some additional layers that you have with like tilt shift and lens effects. You want to dive into some of that?
Yeah, sure. So just to complete the look here, that I think it was present in some of the frames, but not all of them. It was I decided to add these two layers on top here, sort of these overall adjustment layers, to give a bit of a lens effect on the edges of the frame and a blur effect. So I'll walk through those one by one. The first one is real simple. It's just a CC lens, and I've got the convergence set up a little high and the size set to about 150. And all that does is, you'll see as soon as After Effects decides to catch up here, all that does is sort of pull the edges of the frame out a bit to make them look like they're sort of bubbling out towards the viewer, kind of like a fisheye lens would. And it just gives it, I don't know, I just like the way that looks. It sort of stretches things at the edges of the frame. You can see it especially in this particle right here, in a way that kind of makes it look like it was filmed through a camera, or just kind of gives it a cool look. So that was just one effect I added. And then the other one is this blur here. I call it a tilt shift blur though, because instead of just putting a Gaussian blur on this layer and then masking it out so that the stuff in the middle is sharp, I actually used a camera lens blur and mapped it to a blur map here at the very bottom of my composition. So essentially what a blur map is, it's really simple. It's a layer with black and white on it that tells the effect where to apply the effect and where to leave it alone. So in this case, I think I've got it set so the black part of the frame has no blur and the white part has quite a lot of blur. And you can see I added this circle here and just a Gaussian blur on that to sort of feather it out at the edges. And then in the main comp, I've got that blur. You can see it especially in this portion. I've got that blur mapped to that layer I just showed you. And it gives it a nice gradual blur here. It's you can see, especially on the tips of the wings, it sort of feathers out very naturally as if these are closer to the screen or further away, whichever you want to believe. And it looks really nice. It sort of focuses your eye on the center of the frame and gives it a natural looking blur that doesn't look like it's just simply feather masked off. It looks like it's got real fall off here at the edges. And it's something that I add in some more complex designs and stuff like that to just give it a little more interest, make it look a little more real.
Yeah, any of that like kind of like realism you bring back in and layer into stuff that's like very geographical or flat, like adds that whole nother layer to it, which is huge. Mm-hmm. I know when I saw your blur map, I'm having like flashbacks to watching Andrew Kramer tutorials.
Oh, so, yeah.
Dude. The dude's
That's where I learned it.
Yeah, dude, he's the legend. He's the origin for that stuff.
No joke. When you work on stuff like this and you put in the extra time, the extra effort, it really pays off, not just for your career, but for the community more broadly. People get to learn from each other. You get your message out there.
Right.
It's not, you're not sinking. I can see some people sometimes online in the community being a little cynical about projects like this, that they feel that people are being abused when they give their time to stuff like this. And I just think that's a little cynical. I think that it's beneficial for everyone, really.
Right. I feel like to that point, I mean, for me personally, like my whole career has almost been based on the idea of collaborating with others. Like, because I know like my biggest issues as I grew early on were my design abilities weren't where I wanted them to be. And I knew that. But so I thought, if I could collaborate with others, I could elevate my work and also start to do the kind of work that I want to do that looks like the work I want to do. So there's that piece of it. And then, beyond that, I think just like getting into this industry in general, or even just at the creative field in any capacity, I feel like we all kind of have a little bit of that love for show and tell. And doing collaborative projects like this, where we obviously had like design rules and a framework in place, but where we're able to just kind of plug and play and just kind of flex those creative muscles in a unique way that is basically us as the end client, has a payoff, just like you were saying, that's different than I think most client projects out there. Obviously if you're doing the next great thing for whomever and it's awesome and you get paid for it, that's got its own payout. But just like you were saying, like that piece of building the bridge between you and someone else in the creative field and building a relationship is also huge. I know a great example of this is the fact that Marco, he's not a designer that I was aware of. And now that I know him and I know of his work, like I'm excited to get to hopefully work with him again if he's available. And we have a project like that. So it's like,
you might have trouble with that. He is booked up all the time now.
I know, dude. Like I was like, it was funny. You'd send me his work. And I was like, oh man, who is this guy? Cause I know like a recommendation from you, like anybody, I'd be like, I got to check this guy out. And then I saw his work. I was like, how have I not heard of this guy? We gotta get him in on some work. So I know Marco isn't on this call, but Marco, thank you. You're a legend. But yeah, and even piggybacking off that, I guess, Alex, thank you for your time. I know like I love working with you in any capacity. So it was definitely a blessing for me. And then also just the broader team that worked on this project. I mean, again, we were humbled that so many people said yes to wanting to do something like this for us, or not for us, but with us. I mean, we were hopeful that, it would elevate the creatives in a way in which that, they might not be getting publicity as well. I knew with the COVID stuff that's been going on, some people have been having less publicity out there. I know even us in particular, there's just a lot of work that we weren't able to share to get new work. So we thought, hey, what another great way to, give back to the community, to maybe provide an opportunity for people to just do some work with some people that they wouldn't normally get to work with, and maybe hopefully have a project they can actually share. So very, very exciting stuff. But I know like if I'm thinking about, ways in which, I personally have grown on a project like this, I know over the years of running a studio, I do get to do lots of animation, lots of design, but getting to sit in the driving seat and getting to do the creative direction and a lot of the setup is something that I love and I feel like is one of my more sweet spots. So getting an opportunity to do that with not only so many individuals, but also getting to do it with so many individuals of such like crazy talent was really, really cool. I could send out an idea. I know Marco, he did a great job of this. We had the framework sent out, and I was just like, I'm very curious to see like what we'll get back and what we'll see back, because the end frame wasn't really defined as like, we need it to be this, this, and this. It was like, these are some general broad ideas. Let's see what you can do with this. And wow, like, I don't think there was not a single person that I got work back from that I was like, that is bad. It was like everything was like, wow, this is crazy cool. Like, some of them, like, we had to like adjust like colors or maybe some of the compositing effects just for consistency's sake, for alignment of the end goal of all of them coming together. But aside from that, I mean, even especially with your files, Alex, like, not really much alignment was needed beyond just like, hey, like let's do these compositing effects, or maybe let's try this. So it's really cool just getting to work with talent that's like high quality. And I would recommend any student listening, if you have people you follow or just want to learn more about processes or things like that, like, I mean, reach out, email these people. I mean, I know from my own personal experience, I would say 90% of people that I email asking for advice or even just wanting to do work like this will come back and usually share something or just say yes. Or, if they're busy, they're usually so nice about it. I know like a lot of the gatherings of our community, like whenever we get together, I'm always so excited about it because everybody is so kind. So shout out to all of you all listening as well. And even the School of Motion for putting this stuff on. I know like the people there are so kind, awesome crew of people. So thank all of y'all again. And, yeah, hopefully we get to do some more of this in the future. Thanks again to the School of Motion for having us on. This video is just one of 3 motion design walkthroughs. Make sure you check out the others, and if you'd like to check out the entire set of animations produced on this project, head over to the furrow.tv/project/COVID-19. Also head over to the School of Motion to find more articles, tutorials, podcasts, and courses built for beginner to advanced motion designers. You can learn how to plan and execute projects in Explainer Camp, learn how to create and illustrate mood boards and illustration for motion, or learn the fundamentals of animation in Animation Bootcamp. I hope you all enjoyed the content. Give the School of Motion some love by hitting the like button and subscribe if you want some more motion design training.